When I was 13 years old, I learned about a type of infection becoming widespread in Indigenous communities across Canada, MRSA, or methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus. Learning about this infection surprised and scared me because of the fact that it was antibiotic resistant, something that I had never heard of before. Over the years, as I did more research, I realized that this phenomenon of antibiotic-resistant bacteria was becoming increasingly prevalent, and I recognized the need for replacements to antibiotics for infections in the future. Hi there, my name is Ariana Mastro-Leonardo, and I'm a grade 12 student from King's Christian Collegiate. Over the course of my grade 12 year, I pursued a study to investigate the antibacterial properties of microwave-assisted, biosynthesized silver oxide and copper oxide nanoparticles on Staphylococcus aureus with and without teveclinomycin. At the start of the study, I hypothesized that a basic solution of very dilute 0.1 molar silver oxide nanoparticles in conjunction with teveclinomycin would be most effective in reducing bacterial growth. After developing my procedure, I set off on the tedious yet rewarding process at my school's lab, supervised by a co-op student from the University of Waterloo and my school's biology teacher, who taught me the proper safety requirements for handling bacteria. To put the procedure to action, I had to first create the aloe vera and green tea leaf extracts. Next, I created agar plates and a pure culture of Staphylococcus aureus from a colony from my face. Then I biosynthesized copper oxide and silver oxide nanoparticles. I followed that by lawning bacteria on agar plates, micropipetting the nanoparticle solutions with and without antibiotics on discs on those plates, and incubating the plates for 24 hours before measuring the zones of inhibition. I had numerous difficulties from the get-go. Right away, it was found that we lacked the proper Wattman filter paper needed and most of the graduate level scientific equipment utilized to identify and classify nanoparticles. I problem solved and decided to use double coffee filters for filtration and used my school's UV spectrometer to confirm the presence of nanoparticles by comparing the peak wavelengths that I got to the literature. Perhaps the most finicky difficulty encountered was the synthesis of the nanoparticles. I had to determine the correct ratios of plant extract to metal solution, the proper time the solution should spend in the microwave, and hardest of all, I had to find a way to dissolve the nanoparticle precipitant into their respective solutions. This proved extraordinarily difficult and resulted in hours in the lab of trying different methods to dissolve the solid nanoparticle precipitate. Between research and trial and error, I found that ammonia successfully dissolved both types of nanoparticles. As a result of extreme tenacity and patience, my agar plates lawned with S. aureus bacteria and various nanoparticle and antibiotic trials yielded interesting results. I found that my hypothesis was supported. The very dilute 0.1 molar silver oxide nanoparticles, when paired with teveclinomycin, had the largest zone of inhibition of 5.08 centimeters. This is attributed to the low concentration of the silver oxide nanoparticles, the higher pH which caused bacterial cell death, and the use of teveclinomycin, which when paired with the nanoparticles, utilized varying mechanisms to fight the bacteria effectively. The results also demonstrated that only 2 nanoparticle trials had greater zones of inhibition than the positive control of teveclinomycin. That would suggest that although the majority of nanoparticles have bacterial resistance, they did not perform better than the antibiotics in certain conditions, and therefore there might be an interference in mechanisms between the nanoparticles and antibiotics in killing bacteria. In observing the overall impact of copper oxide nanoparticles compared to silver oxide nanoparticles, it was found that copper oxide nanoparticles were more consistent in reducing bacterial growth, while the silver oxide nanoparticles were extreme in yielding both the highest and lowest zones of inhibition. I greatly enjoyed the study for a variety of reasons. 1, I had never cultured my own bacteria before, so learning how to create a pure culture and understand proper agar plating techniques was easily one of the best experiences I've had in high school. In addition to this, as much as this experiment was frustrating at times, the moment when my nanoparticles were identified on the UV spectrometer was so gratifying that I felt this tidal wave of relief crash over me. All the time, everyone around me was telling me to just give up, but by sticking with it, I finally got results, and this was a very valuable lesson that I learned. Most of all, I really enjoyed seeing all of the applications of my study and the difference it could make in the world around me. My study had numerous applications, whether it was using nanoparticles as a replacement to antibiotics in the case of antibiotic-resistant bacteria, or even nanoparticles being used in pre-packaged antibacterial bandages for hard-to-access and impoverished areas with limited space and resources, such as refugee camps. In the future, I see a multitude of areas I would like to expand my study on, including testing various methods of synthesizing nanoparticles. One method that I am particularly interested in is a pure biosynthesis method, in which metal solutions are mixed with plant extracts, allowed to rest for many hours with or without exposure to heat, and result in the synthesis of nanoparticles. I would love to try this test to minimize the usage of chemicals in the synthesis procedure. In addition, I think it is beyond important to do increased research on decreasing the toxicity of nanoparticles for their use on living systems in the future so that they can be applied to our medicine. Thank you so much for your time today and listening to my study. I hope you have learned something new and found it as interesting and enjoyable as I have.